Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Good. So tell me a little bit about how you're feeling after the procedure.
I'm feeling really good.
Good.
I have had just the most minor cramping, but otherwise feeling really good. I got sad after the procedure, which was something that I was kind of like surprised about, but
Mhm.
otherwise feeling really good.
Good. I mean, that's really what we expect is that you should sort of bounce back to feeling pretty much back to your normal self within a few days. I'm
Mhm.
sorry you felt sad. Like that's not something we obviously want, but I guess, when there's hormones involved, things happen.
Yeah, well, I was also
um
reading too that that might be a side effect of the anesthesia too, is that because it does
That is
kind of change
true.
your brain.
Some women do like, and not only women, some women and men actually like get very tearful and weepy when they come out of anesthesia. It's usually short-lived.
It was. It was short. It was short. I was like texting a friend about it. She's like, well, how many eggs did you get? I was like, oh, I got 8. And she was like, oh, a friend of mine got 10 and she's pregnant with twins right now. And I just like burst into tears. I was like,
Oh.
no, this is odd.
And then how do you feel about in terms of how much we got?
I am super excited that
Good.
all 8 of them were mature. I'm hoping for more. I know that
Yeah.
that was in the range that we anticipated, but I was sort of hoping for more since I had the 16 follicles when we started the actual cycle.
Yeah, I mean, we know that number at the beginning of the cycle is really rarely indicative of how much you get. It's just kind of helps us sort of point the needle in the right direction. Um, and I was actually just very pleased with how the whole process went, and how many we got. I think it was overall a good cycle for you.
Yeah, super excited to hear that they all matured. Like when I did hear that we got 8, I was you could probably see it on my face in the room. I was like, oh, shoot, 8.
Oh,
But so happy that they were all matured.
yes, yes, that does happen sometimes.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, my question was, in those smaller follicles, like was there just nothing in there or what was up with
Hmm.
those eggs?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we see in smaller follicles that there are eggs, but the eggs are immature, and sometimes in those smaller follicles we drain them, but there was like nothing in them, or that the egg never really separated from the wall of the follicle. Um, so overall, but you probably, for you, even your smaller follicles probably mature their eggs because you really only had like, let's see, like maybe 10 follicles total.
Hmm.
And so the 8 that we got, some of them came from like, follicles that were like 13s, 14s, and 15s. So that's good. That means, and that's knowledge we could use so that if you decided to cycle again, like we'll actually know that there's a chance that some of those smaller follicles are mature, even at that size, and that's good piece of information to know.
Oh, okay. What kind of a size are you typically looking for in a follicle that's a good indication of maturity?
I would say we usually try to get as many as we can, like between 16 and 20.
Okay.
You also had like a very wide spread. Like you had some that were 11 and your biggest one was 22. And so whenever that happens, we have to make this judgment call of, well, do we push some more to try to get the smaller ones to grow? But what that means is we kind of sacrifice the bigger ones.
Mm.
And so you kind of run this risk of like, okay, well, should we push? Should we see what we get with what we have? And in your case, I really felt like the best thing to do was to go with what we had, and that truthfully turned out to be the right decision. So I'm glad that I made that decision.
Mhm. Yes.
And some of that we learned from just sort of the way the blood work, the pattern of the blood work kind of helps us get a sense of, is there a little bit of wiggle room to push, or does these all look like active follicles? And I was really anticipating we would get somewhere between 6 and 10 frozen, so I'm like really happy that we ended up with 8.
Yeah. So I guess my last question would be, like, that you mentioned that was at 22. So what happens when it grows too much? And what happens to
So
that egg?
sometimes when they grow too much, the eggs will start to degenerate, and so when they
Mm.
look at them in the lab, they're like very abnormal, and they won't freeze them. And so they could tell like that they call them post-mature, like they went too far, like we grew them too far. So that wasn't the case
Okay.
with you either, like your 22 was fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Well, good. I'm very happy with how it all turned out, truly.
great. Good. I'm glad. All right, so then you let us know how we can be most helpful in the future. If you decided you want to do this again, I mean, I think I probably would do the same thing since it sort of worked out well. The one, I would say, tweak that we could consider, because you had, like I said, such a wide spread in terms of the growth of the follicles, one of the things we can consider is starting an estrogen patch for a week before you anticipate getting your period. And what that sort of does is it puts kind of a pause on the follicles growing or the follicle stimulation that happens even before we start the cycle. So that when you start the cycle, the follicles are more synchronized.
Okay.
I don't know that, in the end we sort of got a good number, so I don't know that doing this is going to be better. It certainly won't be worse. But I think it's one way to try to address the fact that you had kind of a wide spread of follicles.
Sure. Well, I mean, hey, if it can't hurt, why not try it if you're going to do it again? That's what I would think.
Right. So it requires a little bit of planning on your part to let us know kind of well in advance of when you plan to cycle again so that we can have you come in like a week to a week and a half before you anticipate your period to do blood work and ultrasound and prepare you to start the patches. But the patches themselves are inexpensive and easy, and people don't really get side effects from them.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, that's really helpful information. And I will take that into consideration if I do decide to do it again with you guys.
Okay. Fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Maslow. I appreciate your help and guidance throughout this entire process.
My pleasure.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Take care.